Hello Stampers, my name is Linda Bedinger and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Denver, Colorado. And this is my buddy Puccini, who's not being terribly cooperative this morning. He was sitting being perfectly happy when I picked him up, and so now he's annoyed with me. And Puccini helps me in the craft room and chews on the edges of my cards and generally creates havoc. I have for you today a pretty fall card, and I put on it autumn wishes, which allows you on the inside to say happy birthday, just a note, thinking about you, you've been on my mind, have a lovely day, any number of things. And I'm using something a little different to make the card. I think you're going to like it, so let's just get started. Here is my card, and it's just a little bit different. Lots of fun. And this is a second version of it that I did. And this is a piece of wired ribbon that I had in my stash. My family has lots of birthdays around Halloween and lots of birthdays in October. And so I make a lot of fall Halloween kinds of cards for birthdays. And so I have tons of this pretty ribbon, and I made up a bunch of cards using it instead of something else in the way of decorations. And then I ran it through an embossing folder, and you'll see I put my sentiment in two different places because depending on where I cut the ribbon, I want this beautiful glittered pumpkin stuff to show. And so I'm doing these for a swap for fall cards, and so I've made actually quite a ton of them, but I wanted to do a video because if you have ribbon in your stash, either Christmas ribbon that's very elaborate and or fall or autumn ribbon that is a little bit more like this. I'll show you another piece I have and another card I made that I'm just about to do a video on it as well, and it is this one. And again, that ribbon is just so beautiful and so rich that it's in fact, here's a second version of that one, and I just fell in love with the idea of this. So today's video will be the pumpkin one, and then I will do immediately afterwards a video on this particular card, and so then I'll start in some more on Christmas cards. But I thought I would make this for you today, and what it takes to make this card is I used a base of pumpkin pie. It's very bright. I used a base of pumpkin pie, and this is cut 11 by 4 1/4 and scored and folded at 5 1/2. So that is our card bases. Then I have two pieces of crushed curry that are 4 by 5 1/4, one for the inside, one for the outside. I have this beautiful piece of ribbon, and you see this is the kind that has the wire along the edge that actually makes it pretty easy to work with. And then for the sentiment, I have this piece, and this piece measures 1 3/4 by 3, and that's big enough to do almost any label that you want to do. I ended up doing, let me see if I can show you which one I used. Yes, this one. This one is Traditional Labels, and I used this one, and they're all stitched, different sizes, a double one, and really pretty. This is the one I used, and you can see that it's going to sit on here just perfectly to give me a chance to stamp it and then set my label around it and cut it out. Okay, and so to save a little bit of time, I have already cut that label and used the stamp Autumn Wishes. And that Autumn Wishes stamp, which is down here, also has a just a note and a thank you. Fond of Autumn is the name of this particular set, and it's got leaves and flowers and berries and acorns and just individual things, and this swoopy little banner here that didn't suit my purpose because I wanted something a little bit bigger. Anyway, that's where the Autumn Wishes stamp came from. So these are the pieces we need to make this, and like I said, to save a little bit of time, I have already run this piece through my embossing folder. This embossing folder, which is a hybrid embossing folder, so it's 3D, it's called Changing Leaves. And I like the big kind of freeform leaves that this has on here. And I used a technique of ink and Wink of Stella to get the shiny bits on this card front. This one's a little darker than that one, but I'll show you exactly what I did to do that. So the very first thing we're going to do is adhere this ribbon to the front of my card. And it seems a shame not to use this big beautiful pumpkin up here at the top. So what I'm going to do, and what I've done for all of these, is because that's got a wired edge, I just folded that over the back. And in fact, maybe I'll put that down just a hair shorter on the card, like that. And because of the wire feature on this ribbon, and I found a lot of ribbons at our local Hobby Lobby that has a fabric area, and it's got specialty Christmas ribbons, and this gave me the idea to do some Christmas cards with this ribbon as well, which I have done. And so I'll be featuring some of those as well. And this shows then a little bit more of some of that glittery stuff. And then I am going to follow up by folding this here along the bottom, again using that wired feature on the ribbon. Now you don't need this much ribbon to make this card. You only, because this is 5 1/4, because this panel is 4 by 5 1/4, you really only need 5 1/2, maybe 6 inches of ribbon to appropriately wrap this around. So I'm just going to trim a little bit of that ribbon on the back here so we don't have this big overhang. And I'm going to cut this one just about the same right along there. And I started on this, once I ran this through the embossing folder and adding the ribbon, to anchor this ribbon down with a little bit of Scotch tape. And so I'm adding some Scotch tape to the back to keep that secured, and a little bit to the bottom here to also keep that anchored on the card. And then on the front of the card, I did kind of fold the ribbon back a little bit so this wire stuck closely to the card itself. Using, let me make sure this is on here straight. In order to secure this down, what I've done is I've taken my glue gun here and just added a bead of wet glue just under that ribbon thread, and then held this piece down just till it gets its grip, taking any glue that's oozing out the side. This is the time to take it away. And actually a handy wipe will work just fine for this. And the glue dries opaque, so you don't see it once it's dried. And once that feels fairly secure on there, I'm just going to turn it around and put another bead of glue along this edge on the bottom and do that same thing. Push this into place and glue down those ends. Now, the other method that I've used is taking a sponge full of wet glue, well, lightly, with a little bit of light amount of wet glue, and going over the back of the ribbon and then holding the whole thing in place. The problem with that is, of course, you get glue oozing up through the fabric of the ribbon depending on how thin your ribbon is, and this is very thin. I did do that with several of them, and what I did was, after the glue was on there and this was fairly well stuck, I used a wet handy wipe and kind of went over the ribbon from the top, and that took most of that glue residue away. So there I have that fairly secured on there. So I took a bit of my pumpkin pie ink, and let's see if I can just get a little bit into the lid here. And then I did get some, and then I added some Wink of Stella, just some, sometimes it globs, so I'm going to use that as an excuse to get some globs of Wink of Stella here and mix it in with the pumpkin pie ink. And I did add just a drop of water or two and got this all mixed in here. So I've got pumpkin pie ink mixed with Wink of Stella and a little bit of water, and I went over these raised leaves in the from the embossing folder, and just added some. I'm going to get a little bit more pumpkin pie ink. I'm going to be sorry I put that in the in the ink, but I want more of the pumpkin pie. And I colored some of these leaves, well, actually all of them that showed any raised detail at all, and got this shimmery kind of orange look to some of these leaves. And now I did switch. I was using the Wink of Stella brush there, and that's going to pour some more Wink of Stella. So I'm using instead now just my water brush and getting some more of that ink mixed in there so that the Wink of Stella isn't quite so energetic here. And colored as best I can the stems and the little pieces of raised material that are in the pumpkin pie ink. And I did that on all of these that kind of show a little bit of the raised detail from the embossing folder. So I'll speed this part up so it isn't so tedious to watch, and I'll be back in a minute. Now on this card I did use Cajun Craze, and in this one I've used Pumpkin Pie, and you see this is a little bit lighter, and I did dauber some of these leaves with a little bit of Pumpkin Pie ink first. I think I like the effect of just the Wink of Stella with the ink. It's very nice and shiny and bright, and I kind of like that look. you do whatever suits you. And you can see it makes quite a bit, so you can do several cards or just use a lot less than I did to get that detail put in there. So this card is now ready to go on my card base. So I am going to add some glue, actually quite a bit, with this ribbon detail and all of this texture from the embossing folder. I want to make sure this goes on and stays on. So I'm adding a bit more glue than I might otherwise do. And I'm going to put this in place. And because it's wet glue, you can kind of scoot it around a little bit to get it on your card exactly the way you want, with the margins around. The card the way you'd like to have them. And then we'll just kind of hold that in place. And, you know, there we go. It's down and it's in place. Some of these have a little bit more wink of Stella on them, so I might add just a little bit more of the wink onto some of these leaves so that they look more like the others. So I'm going to add a little bit of blob of wink and add that to some of these leaves so we get that shimmer factor the same. And it doesn't have to be perfect, and they don't all have to be exactly the same, but I want them to not look like they don't match either. So I'm just going to add a little bit more wink on a few of these leaves to give that same kind of shimmer look, and maybe even to a little bit of this detail on this side. There, I think that pretty well does it. And there is the front of our card, pretty well done. Okay, for the sentiment here, which I've already cut out to save time, I'm going to add some dimensionals. And I'm going to place this one, got a little carried away with the wink on that one. I'm going to go ahead and place the sentiment on this one down further on the card. And you can see on these, I have set it where it's going to show off this ribbon in the best light. So there's that. Now then, I have these Neutrals Adhesive Backed Sequins, and these little orange ones down here work absolutely perfectly with this color. And so I'm going to open up this package. I like to open them on the side because they're a little easier to just scoot out a little bit and then scoot back in again. So I'm going to take 3 of these larger ones and set them around on the card. One there, one down here, and maybe one over here on the ribbon. Big surprise. It's already got Puccini hair on it. So there we go, like that. And that is the front of our card basically done. Now, for the inside of the card, I did take a stamp that I have from a very old stamp set, and I'm sure you've got something similar in your stash. Mine, do you remember this one? Remember Very Versailles? It was one of my favorite ones. And this one says, "Have a beautiful day." And I know we've got another one that says, "Have a lovely day." And so might be kind of fun to try and find that too. And I'm doing my stamping in early espresso. I thought that that one added a little bit to the contrasts on this card. So on the inside, I have a beautiful day, and I put that right up here in the corner. And then I added another one of these sequins, but a smaller one. Right here next to the sentiment. I think that won't impede any mailing prospects you have. And there we go. That's it. So I'm going to put this one on the inside of my card. So I'll be adding a little bit of glue to the back of this card. And putting that in place with a similar margin all the way around. I'm going to see if I can use some tweezers to get some of that Puccini hair off of this thing. I'll do it afterwards. Anyway, there is our fall card, and I think it's just lovely. And I'm sure that either online or someplace you can get some of this fancy ribbon, and by comparison it's really not that expensive to get a small roll of this or some other kind that you find encouraging. And this is the other one that I'm going to do, and I will do this one next. And I just love the look of this one, and I used lots of different textures on it. So there we go. That is my project for the day. Thank you so much for stopping by my YouTube channel today. I do so appreciate it. And if you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, well, I'd love to be your demonstrator. In any case, that's it for me. I will be back soon with more cards, more projects, and more tips. Bye.